$65 billion. Gone. One man's signature, thousands of ruined lives. These are the 10 financial frauds that fooled banks, regulators, and entire governments. And the further we go, the harder it is to believe anyone got away with it for as long as they did. Let's count them down. Number 10. Charles Ponzi. Every scheme like this owes its name to one man, Charles Ponzi. In 1920s Boston, Ponzi promised investors he could double their money in just 90 days by exploiting international postal reply coupons. A real financial loophole, but nowhere near large enough to support what he was promising. Early investors were paid using money from new investors, and word spread fast. At his peak, Ponzi was pulling in the equivalent of millions of dollars a week. But here's the part that should worry you. The mathematics of his scheme were so obviously unsustainable that a single Boston Post journalist cracked it open in weeks. So how did thousands of supposedly savvy investors miss what one reporter caught almost immediately? That question would echo through every fraud on this list. Number 9. Bre-X Minerals. In the mid-1990s, a small Canadian mining company called Bre-X announced they discovered the largest gold deposit in history, buried in the jungles of Borneo, Indonesia. Investors piled in, and Bre-X's stock price rocketed from pennies to over $280 a share, briefly making it one of the most valuable companies on the Toronto Stock Exchange. There was just one problem. Geologists later discovered the soil samples had been salted with gold dust, likely shaved from jewelry, to fake the assay results. When the truth emerged in 1997, the stock collapsed to nothing in a single day, wiping out roughly $6 billion in market value. The company's chief geologist died falling from a helicopter over the Indonesian jungle just days before the fraud was exposed. Officially ruled a suicide, but to this day, some investors aren't fully convinced that's the whole story. Number 8. Allen Stanford. Allen Stanford built an empire that looked on paper like old money respectability. A knighthood in Antigua, cricket tournaments he personally sponsored, a private bank offering suspiciously high, suspiciously consistent returns on certificates of deposit. Beneath the surface, prosecutors say Stanford was running a $7 billion Ponzi scheme through his offshore bank, luring investors with promises that defied basic market logic for over 2 decades. What's genuinely unsettling is how long international regulators had been warning about Stanford's operation before action was finally taken. Internal SEC reports raised red flags years before his 2009 arrest. If regulators saw the warning signs that early, the real question becomes, how many other operations flagged today are still quietly running? Number 7. WorldCom. By the early 2000s, WorldCom was one of the largest telecommunications companies in America, until it was revealed that CEO Bernard Ebbers and his finance team had disguised roughly $3.8 billion in ordinary business expenses as long-term capital investments, artificially inflating the company's profits for years. When the fraud collapsed in 2002, it triggered what was then the largest bankruptcy in U.S. history, erasing over $100 billion in shareholder value and costing roughly 17,000 employees their jobs. What's chilling is how simple the trick actually was. No complex derivatives, no offshore shell games, just basic accounting reclassification that auditors somehow failed to catch for years. If a fraud this straightforward could go unnoticed at a company this large, what does that say about the companies we trust with our money right now? Number 6. Enron. Enron wasn't just a company. It was, for a brief moment, the 7th largest corporation in America, worshipped by Wall Street as the future of energy trading. Behind the scenes, executives used a web of off-the-books shell entities to hide billions of dollars in debt and inflate profits, all while their own accounting firm, Arthur Andersen, signed off year after year. When it unraveled in 2001, Enron's collapse didn't just wipe out roughly $74 billion in shareholder value. It destroyed the retirement savings of thousands of employees who'd been encouraged to hold company stock right up until the very end. And the most disturbing detail is this. Internal emails later showed some executives knew the company was, in their own words, a house of cards months before it fell, while employees were still being told everything was fine. How many other sure things being sold to employees right now are hiding the exact same warning signs? Number 5. 1MDB. In 2009, Malaysia launched a state investment fund called 1MDB, intended to boost the country's economic development. Instead, investigators say roughly $4.5 billion was siphoned off by a network of officials and financiers, funding luxury real estate, a super yacht, and even helping finance the Hollywood film The Wolf of Wall Street. A darkly ironic detail that wasn't lost on the internet once it surfaced. Malaysian financier Joe Low, allegedly at the center of the scheme, vanished and remains a fugitive to this day, believed to be living under the protection of a foreign government that has never confirmed his whereabouts. With one of the key figures in a multi-billion-dollar fraud still missing more than a decade later, the uncomfortable truth is that this story doesn't actually have an ending yet. Number 4. Wirecard. For years, Wirecard was celebrated as Germany's answer to Silicon Valley, a fintech darling that eventually replaced Commerzbank in the prestigious DAX stock index. Then, in 2020, auditors discovered that 1.9 billion euros the company claimed to hold in 2 Philippine bank accounts simply didn't exist. It had never existed. The company collapsed within days, and its chief operating officer, Jan Marsalek, fled the country and has never been found, with investigators later linking him to Russian intelligence networks. What makes Wirecard especially disturbing isn't just the missing billions. It's that journalists at the Financial Times had been raising detailed red flags about the company for years, only to be dismissed and in some cases legally threatened by German regulators who trusted Wirecard over the reporters trying to warn them. Number 3. Theranos. Elizabeth Holmes dropped out of Stanford at 19 with a promise that sounded almost too good to be true. A single drop of blood, run through a proprietary device called the Edison, could screen for hundreds of diseases instantly. Investors, including some of the most powerful names in American business and politics, poured roughly $700 million into Theranos, valuing the company at $9 billion at its peak. The technology, it turned out, barely worked at all. Most tests were secretly run on standard commercial machines, while patients received inaccurate results for serious medical conditions. Holmes was ultimately convicted of fraud in 2022. But here's what should genuinely unsettle you. Some of the most experienced investors and board members in Silicon Valley, people whose entire job is spotting fraud, somehow missed it for over a decade. If they missed it, what makes any of us confident we'd have caught it either? Number 2. FTX. By 2021, Sam Bankman-Fried was being called the next Warren Buffett, a disheveled genius running FTX, one of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchanges, while quietly donating hundreds of millions to political causes and courting regulators as crypto's responsible face. In November 2022, it all came apart in less than a week, when reporting revealed that customer funds, money regular users believed was safely held on the exchange, had been secretly funneled into Bankman-Fried's separate trading firm, Alameda Research, and largely lost. An estimated $8 billion in customer money vanished almost overnight. Bankman-Fried was convicted on multiple fraud charges in 2023. What's most unsettling here isn't the fraud itself, it's how recent it is. This didn't happen decades ago in a world without modern regulation. It happened 3 years ago, in an industry regulators are still struggling to fully understand, which raises an uncomfortable question. Is there already another FTX quietly forming right now? Number 1. Bernie Madoff. And at number 1, the fraud so large it redefined the word Ponzi scheme for an entire generation. For decades, Bernie Madoff ran what looked like an exclusive, wildly successful investment fund, delivering suspiciously steady returns to celebrities, charities, and everyday retirees who trusted him with their life savings. In reality, there were no real trades happening at all. Just new investor money being used to pay off old investors, a scheme investigators say ran for potentially over 40 years before finally collapsing in 2008. The final number was almost incomprehensible. Roughly $65 billion in claimed fraud, the largest Ponzi scheme in human history. Madoff wasn't some outsider running a shady offshore operation. He was a former chairman of the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, trusted by regulators for decades. If the man once trusted to help oversee Wall Street's own honesty could run the largest fraud in history right under everyone's nose, the real, uncomfortable question this list leaves behind is simple. What would it actually take for any of us to catch the next one before it's too late? 10 frauds, over $150 billion lost, and in more than one case, the truth still isn't fully known. Which one shocked you the most? Tell us in the comments and subscribe for the next top 10.